Hello there. It's been a little bit of time since we last looked at our Richard lantern, and it's because I've been having technical problems with the computer. I now have a new computer upstairs. This has been crashing away just like the old one. Not quite sure what's wrong, but hopefully it won't cause any problems during this. We are carrying on with our Richard lantern, and as you'll remember, the lantern is not quite the same shape as this, but the same Richard pattern and Anne Neville pattern as we see on the stained glass window at Cardiff Cathedral. So we've got several colours on so far. Let's put some more on, and here we go. Now, first of all, I'm not quite certain why I decided to have the camera this way round with the pane of glass in portrait mode. It's a little more difficult to show you. I think I'll turn it round shortly. As you can see, I'm putting on black. Now, black is an interesting colour for glass paint. The black that you can get in the pots of paint is not a transparent paint. The sun does not come through it. It's actually an opaque paint, so it blocks out the sun, a bit like the white that we'll see later on. And that can cause problems when you are painting sun catchers, lanterns, and so on. You need the candle to be able to come through. So, here we go. This is the right way around. So I can't really use the opaque black. This is in fact a violet paint. Violet is the name cause. It's a very dark purple. And you can sometimes see that it's purple if you put it on a little more thinly than I'm doing here. It's got a lovely purple tinge. And I think it makes more of an interesting black. There is that very slight purple tinge to it deep down below, which really you wouldn't notice. I'm just touching up one or two bits here. I put the violet paint on very, very thickly, and it does appear to be black. Oh, forgotten the writing at the top here. And again, this is the violet. You can get the same effect by putting brown on very thickly, but I do like the effect that the very slight purple tinge has got. You won't be able to see the purple tinge here. It's when the sun is shining through it. It still looks black, but with an interesting extra on the side. Right, and through to Anne Neville. This is extraordinarily boring painting, just having to be neat and between the lines. Although glass painting is very much like that, I always tend to think of it as between the lines painting. I remember as a child having the colouring books where you had to paint between the lines. And as we've seen, of course, we do a raised edge by painting the lines first, letting them dry, and then it's much easier to put the paint on and it doesn't spill all over the place. Now, Anne has a black top to her dress in the stained glass window, so that's what I'm adding here. I haven't necessarily tended to follow the colour scheme of the window I'm taking it from all the way through, but this worked out nicely. The rest of her dress, the skirt and so on, is going to be gold. And so to have a dark black as a contrast is lovely. And of course there will be the Richard red, Murray red and blue, the royal colours as well. Right. And the next one to come. I'm tempted to just put music on, but I'm told by my sister that people like to watch slow TV and have a melodious voice talking to them. I just hope it's not, people aren't wanting a melodious voice to talk interestingly to them, because I do tend to run out. Perhaps at this point we will start to look at making glass paint dry, which is a difficult problem, and I'm having some difficulties at the moment. It's June 2020 and we've just had a couple of weeks of boiling hot sunshine. It's been up in the 30s, which is very hot for the UK. Then we had a week of torrential rain and thunderstorms, and now we seem to be on a week where we've got one thing one day and something else the next. It was quite nice yesterday. It's been pouring with rain all day today. These are the worst possible conditions for glass paint. Glass paint, and particularly the Lefranc-Bourgeois paint that I use, is fussy. It takes forever to dry. You can get glass paint where you put them in the oven to dry, and indeed those are the ones you should be using if you are painting glasses or dishes or anything that's going to be used or washed in any way. But myself, I don't like the colours that you get from the oven-baked paints nearly so much. I have tried it and liked the colours that they were going onto the glass, but then found that once they'd been baked, the colours had dulled somewhat. I wasn't pleased with the result. It might just be that I had a dirty oven, but I haven't tried that very often since then. Lefranc-Bourgeois vitriol paint, which is what I'm using here, and see my note at the bottom. This paint is very, very liquid, very sensitive to the temperature around. It's very sticky. It picks up every passing cat hair, every passing fly, etc., etc. But the colours are true to themselves when they dry, and they are superb colours. They look wonderful with light coming through them. So I've used these paints for years and wouldn't think of changing. Now they do take, however, 12 to 24 hours to dry. If you're adding one colour and then looking for another colour, I would say that generally, depending on the state of the weather at the time, generally you can afford to leave 12 hours between coats, and sometimes if the weather is warm but not overheated, you can actually leave 8 between coats. And those are exciting times because you can put 2 colours on per day. But more generally, certainly in the winter, or as it is at the moment and pouring with rain, you would need to leave 24 hours between coats. If you attempt to put them on more quickly than that, then they will blend together, and generally these glass paints do not blend well. There are 1 or 2 colour combinations that you can get away with, but generally one colour will blend into the next colour and it just looks like mud. So you need to have a lot of patience and spend a lot of time leaving things to dry. This is why I batch paint. Whilst painting this Richard lantern, I was painting about 20 circles, sun catchers, and probably about 10 other lanterns at the same time, and going around doing a whole day of turquoise, a whole day of violet, etc., etc. I've had some difficulties recently, actually, because of this very up and down weather. Something that I sent off the other day, which had been drying for a good 3 or 4 days, so far longer than needed, arrived, and you could see the imprint of the bubble wrap that I'd wrapped it in all the way through the paint. So obviously I'm going to have to paint that all over again for the customer. It's very frustrating when this happens, and very often you can't tell. I was quite sure it was dry. It had dried for days. I had the finger test, double checked it, and so everything seemed absolutely fine. But depending on what the post office or the courier company does to it, a hot office maybe, a lot of pressure put on top of the box, pushing the packaging down on top of the glass, you can never tell. This is why I do see people complain sometimes that they've received something which, oh, I've finished. So I should go back to me again, and I will just finish off what I was saying. which is I do see people sometimes complaining that the seller has overwrapped their parcel and put so much packaging in, and how silly it all is, and why didn't they just use a sensible amount. You would be amazed at what couriers and post offices do to parcels. They are so careless, and with something like glass, and as I've been explaining, something like glass paint, you need extra all the time. Okay, so I didn't say much about the turquoise paint. It's actually one of my favourite colours, but never mind. And I will see you next time when we add some more colours to Richard. Thanks very much, and goodbye. See you soon.